Joseph of Egypt, the incredible journey of a dreamer who turned evil into good. Have you ever gone through moments when it seemed like everything was going wrong? When challenges and betrayals felt bigger than any hope you had? The story of Joseph of Egypt is a powerful example of how God can transform suffering into blessing, hatred into forgiveness, and the improbable into the extraordinary. Today, we will relive this incredible journey of faith and redemption filled with lessons that continue to inspire us to this day. So, before we dive in, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell to receive more inspiring stories that strengthen your faith. Let's explore Joseph's journey together. Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob and the firstborn of Rachel, the woman Jacob loved most. From birth, Joseph was special in his father's eyes, who openly treated him as his favorite, a fact that his brothers noticed with great resentment. Jacob openly demonstrated his favoritism by gifting Joseph a long, colorful robe, a symbol of status and love that set Joseph apart from his siblings. This favoritism fueled his brothers' jealousy and envy, making them feel neglected and undervalued. Joseph, however, was oblivious to the weight of these differences, and his innocence was often mistaken for arrogance. In addition to being his father's favorite, Joseph had the gift of receiving dreams that he believed were visions from God. In one dream, he saw sheaves of wheat in a field. The sheaf representing Joseph stood upright, while the sheaves of his brothers bowed down to it. In another dream, Joseph saw the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing before him. When he shared these dreams with his family, the reaction was not what he expected. His brothers became even angrier, interpreting the visions as a sign that Joseph saw himself as superior to them. Even Jacob, who deeply loved him, rebuked him, asking if Joseph truly believed the entire family, including his parents, would bow to him. However, Jacob kept these words in his heart, intrigued by their possible meaning. One day, Jacob asked Joseph to check on his brothers, who were tending the flocks far from home. Obediently, Joseph set out to find them. When his brothers saw him approaching in the distance, they began to conspire against him. "Here comes the dreamer," they said scornfully. Fueled by envy and hatred, they decided it was time to rid themselves of him once and for all. At first, they planned to kill him and throw his body into a cistern, claiming a wild animal had attacked him. However, Reuben, the eldest brother, tried to save Joseph from death by suggesting they simply throw him into the cistern without shedding his blood. Reuben secretly planned to rescue Joseph later and return him to their father safely. When Joseph arrived, his brothers stripped him of his colorful robe, the symbol of his favoritism, and threw him into an empty cistern. While Reuben was away, the other brothers spotted a caravan of Ishmaelite merchants heading to Egypt. Judah, another brother, suggested selling Joseph as a slave, arguing there was no profit in killing him. They agreed and sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver. Joseph's fate was sealed. He would be taken to Egypt. To cover up their actions, the brothers killed a goat, dipped Joseph's robe in its blood, and brought it to Jacob, who concluded that his beloved son had been attacked by a wild animal. Jacob was devastated by the loss, falling into deep mourning with no consolation in sight. In Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Despite such adverse circumstances, Joseph did not lose his faith. He stood out for his competence and integrity, and God was with him in everything he did, causing him to prosper even as a slave. Potiphar noticed that everything Joseph touched succeeded, so he entrusted him with the management of his entire household. Joseph worked diligently and earned his master's trust. However, Potiphar's wife began to pursue Joseph, repeatedly attempting to seduce him. Faithful to God and loyal to his master, Joseph rejected her advances. One day, she grabbed his cloak and insisted he submit to her, but Joseph fled, leaving the cloak in her hands. Furious at being rejected, she falsely accused him of trying to assault her. Potiphar, hearing his wife's accusation, became angry and had Joseph thrown into prison. Even in prison, God continued to be with Joseph. He earned the trust of the jailer, who put him in charge of the other prisoners. Despite his hardships, Joseph maintained his faith and integrity. During this time, he met two of Pharaoh's officials, the cupbearer and the baker, who had been imprisoned for displeasing the king. Both had troubling dreams on the same night and were distressed, with no one to interpret them. Joseph, with the wisdom God had given him, offered to interpret their dreams. The cupbearer described his dream. He saw a vine with 3 branches that produced clusters of grapes. He squeezed the grapes into Pharaoh's cup and handed it to him. Joseph explained that the 3 branches represented 3 days and that, within that time, the cupbearer would be restored to his position. Encouraged by the positive interpretation, the baker shared his dream. He had been carrying 3 baskets of bread on his head, but birds came and ate the bread. Joseph had to give a grim interpretation. The 3 baskets also represented 3 days, at the end of which the baker would be executed. 3 days later, Joseph's interpretations came true. Before the cupbearer left the prison, Joseph asked him to mention his situation to Pharaoh, but the cupbearer forgot. 2 years passed. Pharaoh had two mysterious dreams that no one could interpret. In the first, he saw 7 fat cows devoured by 7 thin cows. In the second, 7 full, healthy ears of grain were consumed by 7 dry, scorched ears. The cupbearer remembered Joseph and told Pharaoh about him. Joseph was summoned to Pharaoh's presence and declared that the interpretation of dreams came from God. He revealed that Pharaoh's dreams foretold 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of severe famine. Joseph suggested that Pharaoh appoint a wise man to oversee Egypt's resources during the years of plenty, storing food to prepare for the years of scarcity. Pharaoh was so impressed by Joseph's wisdom that he appointed him governor of Egypt, giving him authority over the entire land, second only to Pharaoh himself. At 30 years old, Joseph began managing Egypt's resources. During the 7 years of abundance, he supervised the collection of grain, storing it in vast quantities. When the famine struck, Egypt was prepared, while other nations suffered greatly. People from distant lands came to Egypt seeking food. Among those who came were Joseph's brothers, who did not recognize him. They bowed before him, unknowingly fulfilling Joseph's childhood dreams. However, Joseph concealed his identity and tested them to see if they had changed. Accusing them of being spies, he demanded they bring Benjamin, their youngest brother, as proof of their honesty. The brothers returned home and told Jacob what had happened. Although he initially resisted, Jacob eventually allowed Benjamin to go. When they returned to Egypt, Joseph devised another test. He placed a silver cup in Benjamin's sack and accused him of theft. Joseph declared that Benjamin must stay as his slave, but Judah, who had once suggested selling Joseph, offered to take Benjamin's place. This showed genuine repentance and a desire to protect his youngest brother. Seeing his brother's transformation, Joseph could no longer hold back his emotions. He revealed his identity, saying, "I am Joseph, the brother you sold into Egypt." Terrified, the brothers expected retaliation, but Joseph reassured them. He explained that God had turned their evil intentions into good to save many lives. Joseph invited them to bring Jacob and the entire family to live in Egypt. When Jacob learned that Joseph was alive, he was incredulous. However, upon seeing the provisions Joseph had sent, he believed and moved his family to Egypt, where they were warmly received by Joseph. Jacob lived for 17 more years and, before his death, blessed his sons. After Jacob's passing, the brothers feared Joseph would seek revenge, but he reaffirmed his forgiveness, saying, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." To accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives, we have reached the end of the journey of Joseph of Egypt, a story that continues to inspire us through the centuries. His tale is a powerful reminder that even in the most extreme adversities, God never abandons us. Joseph was betrayed, humiliated, and unjustly thrown into prison, yet he maintained his unwavering faith. He teaches us that every suffering can be part of a greater plan, something we sometimes only understand much later. What impresses us the most is Joseph's ability to forgive. He had the opportunity to seek revenge, but chose to show mercy and compassion, trusting that God had used even the bad for his purposes. What a powerful lesson for our times. Imagine how the world could be if we all chose to forgive and trust in God instead of holding on to grudges. This is the reflection I want to leave with you today. I hope Joseph's story has touched your heart as much as it touches mine every time I read it. If this message resonated with you, if it brought you hope or inspiration, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a like so that more people can find this content and share it with someone who needs to hear about the power of forgiveness and faith. Before you go, subscribe to the channel to keep receiving inspiring stories like this one, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos. Every like, subscription, and share helps us reach more people with messages that change lives. Thank you so much for watching and for being a part of this journey. May God bless you and your family. See you next time.